Hey folks, Will here again with Happily Ever Outdoors. So I am really excited to do this video. We're going to be doing another look at one of Stanford Outdoor Supply's B.O.S. survival kits. B.O.S. stands for Bug Out Survival Supplement, and this is going to be their shelter kit. Now, just like the other kits in their B.O.S. series, this one comes in a resealable, waterproof bag, got a Ziploc closure at the top. When you get this thing brand new, it has a tear-off piece right there, but this is resealable, so this thing is a all-in-one, ready-to-go kit that you can throw, whether you want to put it in a bug-out bag or in your emergency kit at home, whatever you want to do with it, it's all set, and it's got all the basics you need in this kit to build a shelter. So let's do a quick dump on this thing so you guys can see everything that comes in this kit. Now, as far as price is concerned, this is one of their higher end B.O.S. kits, but the quality of the products in here seem pretty good. We'll go ahead and go through this. First off, you get an 84-inch by 84-inch waterproof tarp. This is kind of the biggest item out of the kit here. But this seems like a really nice quality tarp. This is not like a regular, cheap blue plastic tarp. This is some kind of, I think, like a nylon type material, but it's really lightweight, but it feels strong. And again, this is completely waterproof, so this would be perfect for building a shelter. What's nice too is it is kind of a subdued green color, so if you're using this as like something to go in your bug out bag where you might want a shelter that isn't going to stand out to people, that people aren't going to immediately recognize out in the woods, you want to be able to camouflage it, this is going to be good to go as far as that. So it seems like a really nice tarp right here. We've also got one plastic ground cover. I'm not sure the sizing on this because it's not written on the packaging, but it looks like it'd be a pretty good size. This could be great as a ground cover like it says on the package, or you could use this to build a larger shelter. If you want to have some kind of a waterproof material, maybe you could build a shelter and stack branches over the top of it, use that as like a liner. You could also use this for collecting rainwater a couple different ways. So very cool to see that in there. We've also got one Mylar emergency blanket in here, and this is 52 inches by 84 inches. You've also got a handful of zip ties, 8 of them to be exact. Okay, we've also got 6 aluminum stakes, and I was happy to see that these were not like, the cheapest, most basic stakes that you can get. These actually are a little bit nicer design. I have a set of my own that are an orange color, but the same basic design. It's got the 3 sides to it with the 3 notches cut in the top to really hold your cordage if you're using this to stretch a tarp taut or something like that. And you've also got the loop of cord around the top there that you could tie off of, or you could use that to make it easier to pull out of the ground. So these stakes definitely are nice. They are the lightweight design, but also strong because of the triangular shape. And really nice to see in a kit like this. Now, I was happy to see that they went with a little bit nicer stake. They didn't go super cheap. They went with something that's still going to be lightweight and strong, and that's going to theoretically be able to be reused. So I like the stakes that are in this kit. We've also got some paracord in here, black, 50 feet to be exact, and a good color choice. I would say if I wasn't going to put black in this kit, I would have put green. Again, it is a subdued color. We've also got 6 line adjusters, and I'll go ahead and open that up real quick so you guys can take a look. And you'll be able to utilize these depending on what kind of shelter setup you have to help adjust the lines, adjust the tension on your lines. Now, last but not least, we do have a folding saw that's included here. Now, this is not like a Baco Laplander by any means, but it actually seems like a pretty decent folding saw. If you were in an emergency situation, it would be really, really bad for you to lose your saw. So that's okay to be a bright orange color. It's not the whole thing. It does have a rubberized handle to it, which is nice as well. It does have a locking mechanism, which the first time I played with this, it took me a little while to figure it out, but it's just this big button right here. And you'll be able to open that up. So you can see it is a decent saw. I'm not sure on the length on that. I will double check that and I will throw that up on the screen for you guys. But it seems like a pretty decent length. Again, not as big as my Baco, but pretty good size. It looks like it has pretty aggressive teeth on there. And it's, a nice shape to it. It's a nice saw. Oh, lastly, we cannot forget the included survival sheet, survival tip sheet that comes with this kit, just like all the rest of their kits. This is a waterproof paper. So in this kit, it does give you some survival tips about selecting a site for your shelter, the size, what you can use for ground insulation, different types of shelters. You can see it gives you a two little examples there on the bottom of types of shelters you could use or you could make using the stuff in this kit. And it also gives you some examples on the back on some shelters you can build using more natural materials, which is where like the folding saw comes in play. And even if you were building a more natural shelter like this, or you wanted something that was going to be completely invisible from a distance, you could still use the ground tarp underneath to make sure it's completely waterproof, and then add branches and leaves and things on top to make it hidden and better insulated. So some nice tips right here if you are not familiar with shelter building whatsoever and you just pulled this kit out. It would at least give you a basic idea of what you can do with the stuff that's included in this kit. Alright guys, so there is the layout of this entire kit. Now this one does not have a ton of separate items in it, kind of like the fire kit does, but it has all of the key components that you're going to need to create a shelter right here, and they seem like they're pretty good quality components here, especially the waterproof tarp and the ground cover right here. I'm very pleased with those, as well as the stakes. That's very nice to see in there, and so I think you can really put together a decent shelter with what you see here. Okay guys, so at face value, I am really impressed with this kit. I think at the price point they've set for it, it's definitely worth it. There's some really good components here, especially the stuff that I mentioned specifically, but this is the kind of kit that you really can't take just at face value, because if you just put this in your bag and you are depending on this, if you get into a survival situation, for it to actually give you the shelter that's going to keep you alive, and then you find out in that situation that the kit doesn't work or that the tarp is a piece of junk or whatever, it's too late. You may not make it back out of the woods to file a complaint with Stanford Outdoor Supply. So we're going to actually take this thing out in the woods, see what kind of shelter we can rig up with just the components of this kit, no outside resources, and see how it works out. Alright guys, so here we are. We're out in the woods. This is the state of New Jersey. We are coming up towards the end of June right now, so it has been fairly warm today, actually pretty hot. But the temperature has been dropping at night. Not super cold, but it has been a fairly significant drop. Also, we've had some storms and stuff coming through, some rain, so I definitely would not want to be sleeping out here overnight without any kind of shelter. Now normally, if I were to go out in the woods, there's a few things I would have with me. Number one, I always carry a knife on me. In fact, I've got a knife on me right now, but for the sake of this video, we're going to limit ourselves to everything that is inside of this kit. Now with the stuff that's included in this kit, there's more than a couple options for putting a shelter together. As you can see in this area, there's a lot of felled trees and everything like that, so you could do something as simple as taking the tarp and draping it over a felled tree. Use the paracord to tie it off to make sure it's not going to move, and you can set something up quick and effective. Of course, in a survival situation, whatever is going to be the quickest and the most effective, that's what you're going to want to go for. Of course, there's a lot of other stuff to consider, like the location where you're at, elevation, how exposed you are to the wind, how near you are to water, because that's going to affect the temperature, the type of ground you're on, what kind of moisture can you expect. If you do get heavy rain, is it going to drain, or is all that water going to flood right into where you're bunkered down? There's a lot of stuff to consider, but without getting too in-depth into all that, we're just going to try to set up a shelter real quick here, just using a line between these two trees, and see what we can get together with this kit. Now we do have a ground cover tarp that we're going to use for this video, so we're going to make sure first off that we pick a location that's not going to have a bunch of sticks or hard roots that we can't remove, and then whatever we can remove, we're going to clear that out of the way. Depending on the area you're in, the time of year, you're also going to want to look for things like ant piles, stuff like that. So especially like if you're deep down south, I know the ants are terrible down there from my experience living down there. So keep all of that in mind when you're selecting a site, and make sure you go ahead and clear out anything that might have a chance of puncturing that ground tarp that you're going to lay down. Now that the area is clear, I would recommend going ahead and pulling out that ground cover and laying that out, just so we can have kind of a tarp to work off while we get everything situated. Now obviously right now this isn't situated the way it's going to be. I'm just using this again as a tarp so I can go ahead and dump out the contents of this kit. I wouldn't want to risk dumping it out on the ground because depending on where you're at, and especially maybe if it's getting towards dark, you might lose pieces of the kit while you're getting situated. So important, make sure you have a good space to lay this stuff out so you do not lose anything. Next, I'm going to go ahead and pull out our waterproof tarp, just get it unfolded so I can get a good idea of how large it is so I can figure out what kind of shelter I can make with this thing. Okay guys, so we've actually got a pretty good sized tarp, and I like this because it's a lightweight material, but it's pretty well constructed. You can see it's got a stitched edge there, it's got metal grommets in the corners, it's also got a reinforcement here on the corner. So that's very cool to see that they didn't go super cheap on this thing. So the good news is this tarp, although it's not huge, it's going to be plenty big enough for me to make a nice little one-man shelter. You could even squeeze 2 people under this thing if you needed to. And again, you do have that ground tarp as well that you could utilize as a overhead cover in a pinch if you needed something bigger. So we'll go ahead and run ourselves some paracord from tree to tree here and start getting this thing put together. Alright guys, so I was able to get that situated. That was just real quick, down and dirty. I wasn't using line tensioners or anything like that that is included in the kit. I would recommend definitely working with that stuff if you're planning on being there for a longer period of time, but I was just trying to just throw something together real fast here. One thing I will say, I had to cut this cordage with the included folding saw, which as you can imagine didn't work the greatest. Again, I'm just treating it as if I did not have anything else other than what was in this kit. So maybe it would have been smart for him to include with this kit, even if it was just a little straight razor. But you know, most people, you're going to have some kind of a knife, and if it comes down to it, you're going to improvise. But we got a decent line here. We've got some tension on here, so we're going to go ahead and set this thing up. Okay guys, so we're on the back side of the shelter right now, and if you didn't get what I'm trying to do here, is I'm going to go ahead and stake this side straight down all the way to the ground. This is going to be the back side of my shelter, but I'm going to leave enough left in the tarp on the front so that I can go ahead and leave myself a little bit of overhang. So that'll give me some more coverage if it is raining, that I can get all the way up underneath here and be protected and stay dry. Now with these stakes, I mentioned earlier in my video that I really like these stakes. The one downside that I'm seeing now is that if you're wanting to do something like this where you stake the tarp straight down to the ground, this stake is actually too large to go straight through that eyelet. So, you know, for the sake of convenience, and if you're in a hurry, that would have been nice if that fit. I'd still like this kind of stakes. I don't want them to switch to just like a single stake, you know, where it's just a metal rod. But if you were in a hurry trying to get the shelter set up, but what I'm going to do, I think the simplest and easiest way, you've got this section of cord right here. That's just knotted once. I'm just going to unknot that. That way I can loop this through my eyelet and tie it off, and then just tack this thing straight down to the ground. I hope you guys appreciate this video because I'm pretty sure I'm going to get some ticks out of it. I can see them crawling around out here. This time of year, they're just terrible. I sprayed myself down with repellent, but I think that's only going to go so far. The things we do for YouTube, right? Alright, so we've kind of got this back side situated. We'll get some tension on this once we set up the front. But I would also recommend you can go ahead and find a couple branches and things like that. You can find heavier pieces would be better. And you can kind of weight down that back side a little bit. And then if we were trying to insulate this thing, if it were a colder time of year, you could go ahead and try to find some down branches, leaves, pine straw, whatever you could find, and kind of pile this up on this back side. But this would be enough to really keep this pinned down to the ground, so the wind's not going to blow it up, and then hopefully if any rain comes on this thing, that it will run off and will not try to come up underneath. Now, I didn't specifically point this out, guys, but this tarp does have 3 grommets on each side, so that's a pretty good number for the width, you know, the dimensions of the tarp.
especially on that back side, again, because you have that middle point, you can pin it down to keep it from trying to blow up or anything like that. So now we're going to go ahead and get us a couple links of paracord, pull some tension on this front end, and you'll really see this shelter come together. Now guys, looking at this, I don't particularly like the way that's just sagging in the middle there. I think rain's gonna pool right there and it's gonna really just dump off. They try to kind of cave that in, and I want to get a little more tension on here. So I'm gonna go ahead and use my last stake and add another line in right here. Okay, so now that that part's done, let's go ahead and get our ground tarp situated underneath here so we've got something to lay on top of. Alright guys, so as you can see, this is nothing fancy, and it didn't take a whole lot of engineering. I didn't use a bunch of crazy knots. Again, I didn't use the line tensioners, stuff like that. I just threw something together. You can see that this gives me coverage on the back side all the way down to the ground. Again, I put that weight on top of the tarp to make sure that backside gets pinned down, so I should not have to worry about any rain coming through this way. I've also put a overhang on the front here, so any rain that does come through off the front, it's going to hit the ground here. Now one thing you could do to make this a little bit better is you could, if you had a long, like a log, you could run it through here, pull this plastic up over the top of that, so that way you would have kind of a little bit of a dam, so you wouldn't have any water trying to run over the top of this plastic. By the way, with this ground tarp is a little bit bigger than the tarp on the top, so I would make sure you fold up that extra. You don't want that plastic sticking out from underneath your shelter where it's just going to collect rain and funnel it down into your shelter, right? This is meant to keep you dry, keep you off the ground. These zip ties left over that I could use for another purpose. I also have some paracord left over from doing the shelter. Again, the tensioners that I didn't use, and one Mylar emergency blanket. Now what you could do at this point, you could take this and wrap yourself up with it, or you could tuck it up underneath the line up here in the ceiling and run it down to the back and use this as like a reflective barrier on this back wall. And what that's going to do, especially if you have some kind of a small campfire going out here in front, that's going to help to take that heat, or even just your radiant body heat, and contain it and reflect it back down on you. So that's going to be up to you how you use that. Now let me open this up because I wanted to make sure, yes, this is one single emergency blanket. It would have been nice to see two, because I would have liked to be able to use one for that purpose and then also wrap myself up in one. So if it were my emergency kit, I'd probably throw a second one in there. But very nice addition to your shelter, especially if you're expecting it to get colder overnight. Only one little thing I would add, I mentioned earlier that there was 3 grommets on each side. That's actually only true for 2 of the sides. The way I have this set up, my ends do not have a grommet on there. And honestly, I would have liked to see that because you can see where there's like a little bit of slack going the width of the shelter. If there was another grommet on there, I could have put another length of paracord on that and then wrap that around the tree and just cinch that up a little bit tighter too. The shelter, it would have looked a little prettier. And you know, I would hope that this wouldn't move too much if the wind and stuff got underneath it. But other than that, this seems like a really good tarp. I think you could really count on this to keep the weather out. And this is, you know, a survivable shelter right here. It's nothing fancy. It was something I was able to throw up pretty quick just using the stuff in this kit. Now, if I knew I was going to be here for a longer period of time, again, you start looking for the natural stuff that's available in your area. Start getting some insulation together. You could try to pile stuff up on these ends to block the airflow underneath here if there's a lot of cold wind coming through. So there's some other stuff you could do. But this will give you a very good start, especially if it's something where you're like hiking or something like that and you get lost overnight. This would really be a lifesaver. So guys, whether you're getting this to go in your bug out bag, or maybe you're just planning on taking the contents out, adding it to your hiking gear or whatever, this is definitely some good stuff here. This is not cheap junk. This is lightweight, high quality, high performance gear that's gonna make a huge difference if you're in a situation where you really need it. So I definitely recommend that you take a look at this kit. Now, I didn't really get a chance to use this saw all that much for the particular shelter that I was building, but we are going to test it real quick just to see how well it works. That wasn't too bad. Let's just do a couple more cuts. Just want to make sure this isn't going to like wear dull real fast. Okay, getting a little thicker now. All right, guys, so not too bad as far as folding saws go. The decent length on the blade helps you out. Not as long as some other ones I have, but long enough. It's got a good ergonomic shape to it, so you don't get worn out too fast. And I think this blade will hold up fairly well. I wouldn't count on it as my like everyday folding saw, but as far as an emergency situation, if this was all you had and you were trying to build a little more developed shelter, more of a bush camp kind of thing, you'd be very, very glad to have this. All right, guys, so I appreciate you watching. I've got to get on out of here, get back to the house before it gets dark, and check myself for ticks, because man, let me tell you, they are crawling all over the place out here. And with everything that's going around about Lyme disease and everything else, you don't want to take any chances. So be safe out there, and I hope you guys enjoy this video.
All right, folks, thanks for watching our review of the Stanford Outdoor Supply Bug Out Survival Supplement Shelter Kit. Feel free to leave your comments and questions below, and make sure you subscribe to our channel. If you want to check out the full line of B.O.S. kits, head on over to StanfordOutdoorSupply.com.